Okay, I'm going to give a super quick introduction. So, my name is Carla Roberts. I'm a native Philadelphian on the ancestral land of the Lenape people. I'm a budding Afrofuturist and an interior designer and design storyteller. I graduated in 2021 from Drexel University with a degree in interior architecture, and much of my graduate thesis, pretty much all of my graduate thesis work, was dedicated to building like safe, thriving new worlds for Black people in like a speculative environment. This culminated in about a 200-page book of Black history and Black futures and all of the things that I hoped that we could be. Um, and I'm still kind of pushing that same message. So I teach part-time at Drexel, and I teach as part of a like local art community collective called Fleischer Art Memorial, which is also in Philly. And I'm the buying manager for a local DMV interior design firm called Determined by Design. And the focus of DBD is like erasing the stigmas of affordable housing by giving everybody access to affordable but beautiful and functional spaces. So that work is really important to me. Quick note, we're going to be talking about things like time. We're going to be talking about things like power. We're going to be talking about things like identity. So throughout this kind of presentation, but I want to share this thought with you. If time is money and money is like power, right? And power itself is both autonomy, meaning I can like decide what I want to do with my life, and also influence, where I can push a view or a thought on somebody else, right? How do we start to disrupt this narrative that, for the truth of it, like Black and brown people really didn't get to write anyway, right? So that's kind of the first thought I want you to keep in your mind. All right, so what is Afrofuturism? First, I got to give you a definition, right? So, Afrofuturism is an intersection of imagination, technology, the future, and liberation, and is generally defined as a way of imagining possible futures through a Black cultural lens. And that's the definition combined of Yatasha Womack and Ingrid LaFleur, who are both big scholars in this thinking. So, like, let's get like a little bit more nuts and bolts. So Afrofuturists lean into science, tech, think STEM, and social sciences alongside art, music, spoken word, and storytelling as a way to challenge what is, right? And consider what might be in its place. So some of the primary ways that this is done is to poke at the big pillars of our existence, right? So time, space, time, because we understand that space and time kind of rock together, considering power and how it's manifested in the Western world, which is oftentimes through the visual cues, right? Like we see it, so we acknowledge it. And then identity, right? So when you show up as Black and brown in the world, what does it mean, and how are you seen, right? Okay. So I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge this like image in the center of your screen right now. This is the Sankofa bird. So I'll give you some quick notes about this because it shows up in symbolism across like Afrofuturist thinking. It's colored in the Pan-African flag, which is to kind of call back home and to create unity between all the peoples who've been disconnected and separated, right, from Africa. It's a bird, right, with its feet firmly placed forward, right, set in the present, like literally 10 toes down on the present. The bird itself has its head turned back, and that's to honor the past and what's come before. And the egg, that thing on its back, is actually an egg. And that egg represents the future, right? That we have to nurture it and care for it. And that's our responsibility. And that responsibility shakes out in all of these different sorts of ways. So the kind of most important point to acknowledge here is that Afrofuturists think about time as past, present, future, as opposed to the kind of Western linear past, present, future, right? And that's something we'll discuss more in a minute. All right. So that past, present, future, right? That super linear timeline, it's easy to control and manipulate. You can even kind of get into the conversation of like CRT and people beginning to try to change history to bend in a particular way. but it really does defy our known universe, right? We have seasons. We have that run on a cycle. We have clocks that run on a 24-hour cycle. We have literally our entire natural world is cyclical. Our planets run around the sun, the galaxy runs around all of that. Like it's all this big cyclical thing. And we need these cycles, right? It helps support the continued growth of us as a people and as a planet, right? But humanity gets real stubborn, right? They kind of want to control time. And if you look at that image in the middle, that's a representation of the prime meridian, right? The prime meridian itself was one of the ways that people established like time, right? It runs through Greenwich, New England, or Greenwich, England. And it was established by the British Empire. The kind of really super jacked up thing that's going on with this prime meridian is it was used to navigate the seas and like the navy's maritime like law and understanding. And guess what else was happening at that same time period? They were snatching people. From coast to coast, snatching people, right? So we don't love the prime meridian. We get it, but we don't necessarily love it. And then we've got this overall system of linear time that always has us running, right? We're running behind. We're running late. We're running scared. And then we're constantly chasing desperately after time. How do we get more? How do I buy it? Save it, spend it. We're all living on borrowed time, right? And then we got to pay attention so that we don't waste time, right? It's stressful. So we've created a system that, under the best of circumstances, creates consistent stress, right? For pretty much everybody. And under the worst of circumstances, has actively been used to oppress half, if not more, than the known world, right? Not great. So if we consider time as a great denominator, it chops up everything. And by constantly chopping up time, it lessens our ability to exist in space, to be in anywhere, right? So Afrofuturism wants to challenge this a little bit. Afrofuturists think about cyclical time. I like to call it Afrofuturist time. It asks us to consider everything, everywhere, all at once, right? The past and the pain of the past, right? But also the knowledge and the resilience and the power and the honor that's there waiting for us, right? The present and the limit of our current circumstances, right? We get stuck a little, but also the unexpected joys and the laughs and the acceptance and the fearlessness of living in the moment. There's a beauty there, but also the future, right? And the future, we have to deal with the worry of the unknown, but also the celebration of things to come. Like, y'all, we just went through New Year's, right? The hope for a better day, sowing seeds of belief in each other's collective power to create a beautiful tomorrow, right? So this is Afrofuturist thinking. A lot of what's happening here is about feeling empowered. Time truly has not worked in the favor of the melanated world, right? In so many ways, it's been used against us, freedoms withheld, fairness withheld, respect withheld. So what's a good way to mess around with that? We start democratizing time. And cyclical time gives us an opportunity to do that kind of thinking. If time sets the tone and reshapes pretty much everything around it, how can we get some more equity in time? And my argument is to look back. And a quick note, the colloquial term for the Sankofa bird, like the phrase associated with it, is go back and get it. So I'm pretty sure I'm on point with this. All right. So why go back into the past? Because it's wealthy. We're leaving wealth on the table here. The people who have learned to utilize the past to create new futures are the world changers, whether we like it or not, for better or worse. There's a unique hopefulness in believing that you have a future and that it's beautiful. So I've got 3 columns right here. I'm showing you 3 different examples of this. The first column on your left is the Dahomey tribe, right? This came like if you've seen The Woman King, these women warriors should be familiar to you, but also if you've seen Black Panther. The Dahomey come directly, like are the direct inspiration for the Dora Milaje in Black Panther, all right? So that's a very it's true historical fact that these women warriors existed, even down to like the colors that were chosen to represent them and the weapons that they carry, right? It is the Dora, right? So somebody used that idea. Let's go to that middle column. You might not know who's on the left, but you might know who's on the right. The right is Storm, right? X-Men, mutant, right? She was one of the first times I ever saw anybody Black in a cartoon that had true, real power, right? But she's based off of somebody too. She's actually based off of the African deity Oya, right? And this is like a legacy that a lot of people still believe in, right? Oya was the controller of lightning and storms and the wind and the sea, right? Those are all of Storm's powers. Somebody just ported it over and made it into a comic book character. And then I know y'all know this last one. This is Living Single and Friends. Living Single is basically the entire basis for how Friends worked. Living Single was canceled after only a few seasons. It only really reached a Black and brown audience. Friends went on to reach millions upon millions and was incredibly successful, one of the richest TV shows around, right? These people were paid astronomical funds, right? So why am I showing you this? Many of the same people who pretend to ignore the past also understand that the past has a wealth of untapped resources, right? They reach back and they grab it and grab whatever's back there whenever they need it, whenever they need a new idea. But that's our bank, right? This history is ours. It's our knowledge. We made the deposits, right? It's our wealth. So can't we make some withdrawals? Like, isn't it time for us to make some withdrawals from this? All right. So that's your thought. And then I want you to put this in the chat for me as well, right? This is the final kind of question of this little module. Share a one sentence explanation of what you believed about the past and the future when you were the age of your students, the people that you are working with now. So let's see, I'm gonna pop over the chat. Look, y'all, it's ours to take. So make sure you're thinking about this, and I encourage you to ask your students questions like these. Okay, we are gonna go. All right, to what about the power of sight now, right? So I'm gonna give you a quick definition of visual culture and how, like, start to try to connect it to you for like the purpose of power. Visual culture is a way of studying a work that uses art history, humanities, sciences, and social sciences. It's intertwined with everything that one sees in their day-to-day life, how sight, knowledge, and power, right, are all related. Visual culture analyzes the act of seeing as tension between the external object and the internal thought processes, right? So our brains hold the majority of their processing power for visual data. That's where we are, right? Some might argue that's right, some might argue that's wrong. But the Western world is built upon the visual. And this is one of the ways that power is demonstrated. So think about who sees, who's allowed to watch, who controls what is seen. And think about that in the context of representation, right? So even when we get into thoughts like the cell phone, right? This cell phone, right, has allowed entire movements to leap forward simply because those without a voice, right, they couldn't speak it and they were silenced, could instead be seen, right? And it became almost inhumane to continue to ignore it. So what's the thought here? We're democratizing sight, right? So what does it mean to contend with a world that is so focused on the visual when the visual is the thing representing our difference? We're asking some questions about that. So this is the importance of being seen. And I'll give you just another quick little like nuts and bolts definition for visual culture. Visual culture refers to the tangible or visible expressions by a people, a state, or a civilization, and collectively describes the characteristics of that body as a whole, right? So again, are we empowered to see and feel all the perspectives? How are our views limited? Now, I'm going to get into the chat with y'all one more time. Look at this picture on the left. Can you identify how many perspectives are in this picture? Give it a guess. Best guess. I'm seeing, okay, got 4, 7, 4, 5. Yeah. Infinite. I like that answer. Yeah. Okay. All right, let's run them down. So we've got, I think her name is Parker. We've got the child staring at the image, right? That's one. We've got the security guard, right? How many people are going to see it online? A big one. We've got the mom who's taking the picture. We've got the artist, right? We've got Michelle, right? We've got whoever pulled it to be editorialized. We've got the editors that approved it. We've got the website it went out on. We've got all of us, right? So this thing that like it's this one small ripple of being seen just bounces out to so many people. And if so much of, like, let's go back, if so much of visual culture, right, is an understanding of a state or a civilization that describes the characteristics of that body, how deeply important and integral is it for people to see this as a position of power? I think really important, right? I'd argue incredibly important. All right, so we're gonna go on to the next. All right, some of you may know this lady on the left, but I'm gonna play a little bit of video, and if you don't know her, you'll know her shortly.
Star Trek is an iconic series from the 1960s. It's also one of the most culturally progressive shows of its time. This is due, in large part, to a strong, unforgettable female officer on board the starship.
My name is Nichelle Nichols, and I played Lieutenant Uhura on Star Trek, and I did a damn good job.
The 1960s were the height of the American Civil Rights Movement. At the very same time, Nichelle Nichols was one of the only black women on TV who played a confident and strong character.
I want immortality.
But had it not been for a certain superfan at an NAACP dinner, Nichelle would have never made history like she did.
He came over, he was really excited, and I looked at him, and it was Martin Luther King.
She told him she was leaving Star Trek only after taping season 1.
And he stopped, he said, "You can't leave. You don't have a black role, you have an equal role." And I realized I had a responsibility to that character, to all those people out there. And that responsibility becomes part of your life.
All right. So that was Nichelle Nichols. She played Lieutenant Nyota Uhura on Star Trek. What's interesting about her is that she went on to be recruited by NASA, right, to recruit a diverse population of skilled workers, genius people, right, to NASA who didn't believe that they could even show up there, right? She recruited all these people. And this lady on the right is Mae Jemison, who was influenced directly by both Lieutenant Uhura and Nichelle Nichols showing up as an ambassador for NASA, right? Guion Bluford also was directly like impacted by seeing this woman show up and tell people that NASA could also be a part of them, like it could be a part of their legacy as well. And Mae Jemison, I love this picture on the far right, because Mae Jemison actually did a guest starring role on Star Trek at the time. It was wonderful. And it was one of her dreams to do that and to connect with Nichelle Nichols on that level. And they were friends up until Nichelle's death. So wonderful, right? Being seen. All right. So I'm going to give you another couple notes. So much of our understanding of ourselves, both as Black and as Americans, is locked in the remnants of what we can still see within ourselves and the generations to come. So let's celebrate everything that we kept and how we reshape the world by showing up as ourselves, right? We kept our music, we kept our religious attitudes, we kept our language, we kept our humor and our culture, and all that we've become by lifting one another, right? I love to leave this note about language. How many of you have heard before ax versus ask, right? That's one of the key kind of things that people poke at with, especially concerning Black children in education. Like, why they struggle to say ask so much, right? Well, actually, what we discovered when we did some linguistic research was that there is no ASK sound in any of the traditional African languages. There is no ASK. And languages are learned over generations and millennia, right? So imagine showing up on the shores of the United States and nobody's teaching you the language, right? Like no one's teaching it. You just kind of have to get it from garbled mumbles and people screaming at you from plantations, right? And the people who are leading these plantations are also immigrants. So their understanding of how to say these words in and of itself is full of accents and weird sounds that you can't recognize, right? So you're doing the very best that you can, right? So axe was a sound that we knew how to make, right? It was close enough and we knew how to make it. Fun little fact, right? And then we go from struggling to command the English language, right, to this.
Mr. President, Dr. Biden, Madam Vice President, Mr. Emhoff, Americans, and the world. When day comes, we ask ourselves, where can we find light in this never-ending shade? The loss we carry, a sea we must wade. We've braved the belly of the beast. We've learned that quiet isn't always peace, and the norms and notions of what just isn't always just is. And yet the dawn is ours before we knew it. Somehow we do it. Somehow we've weathered and witnessed a nation that isn't broken, but simply unfinished. We, the successors of a country and a time where a skinny Black girl descended from slaves and raised by a single mother can dream of becoming president, only to find herself reciting for one.
Beautiful, right? When you think about it, like encourage ourselves and encourage our students and encourage our world, because there's a lot of beautiful things in being seen. And when we are seen and we're allowed to show up, wow, pretty important, right? So the back question for this is, how many perspectives are in this picture? Like a lot, like an insane infinity amount are here. All right. So I have another question for you. You go ahead and leave it in the chat for me. What's the biggest ripple you can imagine to change how power is used in this world and how you are represented within it? Big question. Play around with that a little bit. All right. Leave me some notes. Okay, we're going to go on. Last module. What about the Black, brown body and identity? Visually, this has been used to persuade, to tantalize, to objectify, to marginalize, to fantasize, to confuse, traumatize, and every other eyes that has ever existed on this planet. Maybe the hardest part, and frankly, the most exhausting part, is the policing internally and externally of how we show up, right? And if ourselves, as ourselves, is actually acceptable. So what are we doing in this moment? We're trying to democratize the way that we are allowed to show up, right? To make it fair, to make it just. And that means showing up in a lot of different ways. And what are those ways? Like, what can we do? So first, we're going to show up as if this body was made of stars, right? So this is Michael Owuna's Infinite Essence. He's an artist who tired of the exposure of Black bodies bleeding on the streets and turned to the idea that we too are made of the remnants of stars. So he took these beautiful nude figures and painted them in luminescent paint and actually used a bunch of ancient like African techniques for like revealing color to like get these wonderful photographs. What's so important about what we are seeing here is that these people are still, they're calm, they're in repose, they're vulnerable, they're resting, they're moving slowly, and they're in expressions of great peace and serenity, something we don't get to see of ourselves very often, right? Black people are always like back to that first thought, right? Everybody's always running. Like, what does it mean not to have to run? What does it mean to give yourself time and peace to just be, right? So how can we use the body to represent that? All right. What if, right, this body that we are in is allowed to be the protagonist? We make ourselves the protagonist. We are the hero, right? I'm going to play you a little clip of this. This is Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse.
200 miles per hour with a blindfold on. Mama always asking, where did I go wrong?
Took you long
What's
enough.
up, danger? What's up, danger?
I see this spark in you. It's amazing. Whatever you choose to do with it, you'll be great.
Our family doesn't run from things.
You're the best of all of us, Miles. You're on your way.
When do I know I'm Spider-Man?
You won't. That's all it is, Miles. A leap of faith.
Like, what's up, danger? Like, what's up, danger?
All right. So much of this film is about feeling what it's like to live again, but also, frankly, an adult, right? Out of time, trying to figure out what's your identity. How do I show up? Who am I? What do I want? What does it mean to be? Right? But let's think about some things here too. This Spider-Man is an Afro-Latino teen country. He's dressed in a hoodie, a blood red hoodie.
Just
How that is
the sound from the video is lessening your audio. I don't know if you can pause it for a second or lower the sound.
okay. I'm going to pause it for just a second though. All right. Thank you. Okay. So this Spider-Man is an Afro-Latina teen with a young face. He's dressed in a hoodie, a blood red hoodie. Make sure you keep that in your head. How about his sneakers? You see that glass that broke, right? Where is he? Where is he even, right? Looks like it's in a city. Looks like it's actually the inner city. Who does he look like? What's the song in the background? It's talking about what's up, danger, right? You see that clip of him like falling, flying, rising. What's happening there? What kind of sneakers is he wearing? Let's go back to that sneaker question, right? And how does all of this speak to what we think about of Black childhood, like Black youth? I'm going to play it a little bit more for you. Okay. Anybody know? Anybody know who he is? Any guesses? All right, I'm going to tell y'all. It's Trayvon. It's Trayvon. This character was built and based literally off the face and image of Trayvon Martin. In the blood red hoodie, which was the color that it was after he finished bleeding, right? In the sneakers, right? And we're taking this image And we're going to make him not only live, but survive and thrive. And he's the hero. He's the hero of this tale, right? It's a beautiful thing to consider Black personhood and Black childhood in a Black body, right? But so oftentimes it's faced with such fatalism. So what do we do and how can we show this in a completely different way, right? All right, I got one more for y'all. Hang in there with me. So we're going to talk a little bit about voguing, another way to show up, right? Play a little video.
I was inspired by voguing because voguing allows you to be anything and anyone you want to be.
Vogue is within the realm of a dance family. And that's what it's supposed to be, a dance family.
The name voguing comes from Vogue magazine. The movements that define the dance are based on model poses from the fashion publication. Willie Ninja, who's called the godfather of voguing, also drew inspiration from martial arts, ballet, gymnastics, and even pantomimes. In the critically acclaimed documentary Paris is Burning, Ninja defines the dance as an extension of throwing shade. Instead of fighting, two people would settle their beef on the dance floor. So whoever had the best moves would be throwing the best shade. During the 1970s in Harlem, houses were formed within the larger drag ballroom scene. These houses serve as surrogate families, primarily for Black and Latino queer youth. Each house is led by a mother or father who also serve as guides to the ballroom community. House of LaVesia was the first to form in the late 70s. Other notable houses include the House of Extravaganza, Ninja, Pendavis, Corey, the House of Wong, the House of Dupree, and there are many others in New York and across the U.S. While many of the names came from the founders, other houses are named after designers like Chanel and Saint Laurent. Members come together to walk against one another in various categories at elaborate balls. Beyond the performance or throwing shade, these balls create a safe space for empowerment and belonging.
Whatever you carry with you, you leave it on that floor.
I love that line, right? Whatever you carry with you, you leave it on that floor, right? So I'm going to show you one more video at the very bottom. Pay attention to what these kids are doing. What do you notice about the kids? Anything special? Think about it. Right? Think. What are they all wearing? Yep, they're young and diverse. Pajamas, yeah. But why might they all be wearing pajamas? Notice what they're all wearing on their faces. Masks. This was shot during COVID, when kids came together, like, to gather on social media to express, and they could barely even show up anywhere, and they found a way to show up in group of and to heal and try to reconnect. Yes, in the school library, right? So this is another beautiful expression of a way that Black people show up. Black people turn up everywhere. Brown people turn up everywhere. Church, right? The club, like in like places that we technically probably shouldn't, or people are telling us that we shouldn't, right? We turned up on the plantation, trying to get through the pain of being there. We used our dances and our movement and our songs as a way to push through pain, and we left it all on the floor. We always leave it all on the floor. So what does it mean to be able to apply that, maybe in a classroom setting? What does it mean to apply that to allow people to actually move and feel, to emote, right? All right. Last question for them. If you were given the free space to actively emote completely unchecked for the next 30 seconds, any feeling, any action, what would it be and what would you do? Cry, sing, rest, dance, jump, scream, pray? These are all good questions to ask students because they feel a lot and they don't always talk about it. So in this moment, we are asking to democratize our ability to feel, to dream, to move freely about the world, and to show up in whatever way we need to show up. All right, so I'm gonna pause there because the next part is our workshop activity, right? I'm gonna show you a video and I want you to watch it closely, and then I'll give you a quick breakdown of what it is just in a sec. So roll with me on this one. We're gonna be doing orikis, which are praise poetry or praise songs for yourself. These are originally a part of Yoruba culture, so it's also something else that we've kept. Think about how we gas each other up, right? We say reckless, amazing things to each other, so much so that everybody around us gets a lift. She's the child of royalty, the child who dominates one and dominates one's property. This is not about being humble. Don't be humble. You are supposed to gas yourself up, tell yourself you are fabulous, and explain it as best you can to everybody else. So this is like the explanation, one of the kind of ways it's been used in modern culture.
Stand in the presence of Daenerys Stormborn of House Targaryen, rightful heir to the Iron Throne, rightful queen of the Andals and the First Men, protector of the Seven Kingdoms, the mother of dragons, the Khaleesi of the Great Grass Sea, the Unburnt, the breaker of chains.
And I'll have this on you on the other screen for you, so you'll be able to see it again. This is the author of the book. First of her name, Assassin of the Alphabet, bestseller of books, conqueror of copy, dame of diction, sorceress of side eyes, Nigerian noble, Chi-Town creator. She did one for Beyonce. Beyonce Giselle of House Carter, first of her name. Snatcher of edges. Killer of stages, citizen of Creole Wonderland, legendary Black girl, Wakandan Council president. And she did one for Michelle Obama. Michelle LaVaughn of House Obama, first of her name. Dame of dignity. Melanin magnet, magnificence, Chicagoan boss lady of brilliance, owner of the arms of your envy, and forever first lady. And now we're gonna do one. So here's the formula. You wanna go first name of middle name. House is your last name, your surname. The number of your name. If you're a junior, you wanna go second. If you're not a junior and you are the first person with your name in your family, you are a first. And then you get into your praise of yourself. It is meant to praise yourself. Please do not hold back on praising yourself. I'll give you a quick read of mine so that you know what I mean, right? I am Carla B. of House Roberts, first of her name, boss of building worlds, breaker of generational chains, child of the Most High, scholar of tomorrow, Afrofuturist, arbiter of today, and bearer of her family's yesterdays. Go ham on these. And we're going to put you in like small groups to kind of jump around with them. When you come back, please, at least one person share theirs with me, please.